objectif principal.
Okay, so I'm Gary Lucas, and welcome to the Pop Montreal version of my Captain Beefheart Symposium. And so the preamble begins here. People asked how I first became aware of Don Van Vliet and how I met him. Briefly, a record appeared on the racks in 1968 in my city of Syracuse, New York, where I was growing up, that was called Strictly Personal, and it had a very striking cover. It looked like a manila envelope with stamps on it, and it was marked Strictly Personal. And it looked like the kind of envelope that would house pornographic material. So what better place to do this Beefheart Symposium than in a porno cinema? But if you looked closely at the stamps, instead of George Washington, nowadays Howlin' Wolf on the stamp, there were pictures of individual members of the Magic Band. And the address was marked Glaston, One Ray Gun Drive, Glaston. And this was the heyday, actually, of Ronald Reagan. Although later Beefheart would claim, you know, I would predicted that he would be president. Anyway, it was an unusual looking album, and it was on a label no one had ever heard of, and it was Blue Thumb Records, which Beefheart later took credit for coming up with this image through his manager at that time, Bob Krasnow. And the record sold for a lot of money in those days, I think about $8.98. But within a month, it was a cutout, and I purchased it for $1.97. And well, listening to it, I was definitely impressed by the onslaught of very powerful blues-based music that had quite fantastic surrealist touches running throughout, but the overall sound of the record was a bit muddy for my taste and distorted. And I was used to much more slick type psychedelia. I was into psychedelic rock, art rock of the time. So I filed it away as a curio. 6 months after this is like late '68, in June of 1969, I believe the month was, Trout Mask Replica appeared on my record store racks. And that had the beautiful cover by Cal Schenkel of Don holding a fish head over his face. And it said on the back, produced by Frank Zappa. So I said, I really have to get this. I mean, I loved Zappa and the Mothers, and I'd seen him at that time. So that gave it the imprimatur of not only hipness, but greatness. And I was initially puzzled by my first listen to it because it seemed almost like beyond chaos, a lot of it, with beautiful poetic imagery running through it. But musically, I couldn't really tell if initially they were just playing randomly and freely in the studio. But after a couple of plays, I discerned very, very complex and very well executed methodical structure throughout the record, and was convinced of the genius of it.
What's it called? Witty wanna do the lava, dee da bada witty. What's it called? Diddy want diddy. I loved a man, sorry, when I was 13, I think, about 14, 13 years old. Do you know an actor called Stuart Whitman? Does anyone know Stuart Whitman? I was like, oh my God, that's why I love Stuart Whitman. Well, I mean, that was way before, I'm probably as old as Don Van Vliet, almost, but let's bring all the readers up. How about that Dan Levitin? How about that? Hey, where's the guy? Where's the Cummins guy? He ain't coming, he ain't showing. But I did love Stuart Whitman, and the first